Here are the different square wave signals for our counter. Up on top, we have the input that's coming from the 555 timer, and we've talked about that input a little bit in previous questions. So the important thing to note here is that the active signal value for the input is 0 volts and the inactive is 5 volts. So it's active about 40% of the time, as we found from our duty cycle. And then every time this clock moves from an inactive signal at 5 volts to an active signal at 0 volts, then our other outputs are going to change when that change happens. So if we start at QA, QA will change from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 every single time that the clock moves from an inactive signal at 5 volts to an active signal at 0 volts. So you can see here, QA goes from 1 to 0, and then at 1, QA will change from 0 to 1, and then that pattern will just keep repeating. QB has a similar pattern, except as you can see right here, this is a good indicator. QB is active for twice as long as QA, and then inactive for twice as long, except for the period from 8 to 9, we can see here for QB, and then jumping back to 0 to 1. QB would switch here if the clock kept going to 10 and 11 and on, but since it jumps back to 0 after 9, it's going to stay inactive a little longer there. QC, similar results there, twice as long as QB, you can see here, but then the inactive signal remains inactive longer because of that jump. And then QD, similar again, twice the inactive time of QC at the beginning, and then it's only active for a very short period of time because of that jump again to 0. If this signal went the full 0 through 15 that a 4-bit number is capable of going, then each of these outputs would spend half the time active and half the time inactive. But because we have that jump, our signals get cut short and then repeat themselves. And down at the bottom, we have our XOR signal, and that's just using QC and QD. So we can see wherever only QC or QD are active, our XOR signal is going to be inactive. So here, this segment, QC and QD are both inactive, so the XOR gate is inactive here. QC is active from 4 to 8, and then 8 through 9, only QD is active. So we have that period of activity on the XOR gate, and then it becomes inactive again at 0.